Oh gosh, I forgot. It's been a while. It's been 2 months. How does it go? Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird. I'm your host today, Strike the Sun MD Lucas, and I'm here with your normal host, Mr. Nothing. Hello, Mr. Nothing.
Hello, Lucas. What movie are we talking about today?
A very controversial movie, I would say, from 2012 called Egg and Stone, uh, directed by a Chinese director, Huangi Ji, and it is starring Yao Honggui, sorry. And we had some very different opinions about this movie.
There's no Wikipedia page for this movie, so I couldn't look up any other details really about like like who specifically made this. And so you couldn't be warned about what you're going to encounter with this movie.
Yeah. I literally didn't know anything about it when I picked it. I just know that you had mentioned before we talked about uh um the fantastic Dr. Caligari film, or Dr. Caligari and his cabinet, or whatever it's called. And you had mentioned that we hadn't watched a film directed by a woman, and that you were going to pick one directed by a woman. And I just felt the competitive drive inside of me to pick a film directed by a woman before you. So, and I also wanted to pick a film from a country that we hadn't watched a movie from yet. And I saw on Criterion Channel that they had Huang Ji's Egg and Stone. And I was between that one and the other movie, which I forgot what it is called. And ultimately, I decided Egg and Stone because I saw just a little snippet that said it's an autobiographical film. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. Let's do that movie.
Well, I am irreparably scarred for this choice, and it wasn't even intentional. Like you forced me to read and watch the most absolutely bizarre things before in the past, and this kind of, to me at least, it kind of surpasses any of them. Like
It's
it's
hard to
very
watch.
it's
It's
very hard
very
to
hard to
watch.
watch. It is uncomfortable the entire 2 hours. I'm very sorry. I will make sure to screen, so to speak, what I pick before
No,
I.
no, like I'm fine with you picking things at random, but I'm gonna have this reaction when you do that. So just like to let you know.
Hey, all right. Um,
I should
so
point out before we go forward that I wrote like the usual summary of the movie, and it was just like question mark. Like I had a hard time following the movie, and that's going to be one of the things that I complain about. And then I didn't even
mm,
bother writing the things I liked and the things I didn't like, because it just it like so deeply like bothered me that I can't really think of anything. But
well,
I'll still try when we get to that.
I would say, I mean, given the absolutely dark places this movie goes, maybe it's not such a great thing that it bothered you, but on the artistic level, it did affect you. So it did something, right?
Yeah,
But it
that's what I was
is,
thinking. Like this movie, like the goal of any movie is to make you have a reaction, and so I had
yeah,
a reaction, and so it succeeded.
yeah. I think, yeah, we should warn anybody who's interested. I think you can only watch it on Criterion Channel in the States, um, and wherever else you can stream Criterion Channel or buy Criterion Channel DVDs or whatever. Uh, this is not for the faint of heart, and there is a very heavily implied rape. Um, so content warning. That's basically the movie. I mean, that's the summary of the movie, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like there's not a lot that happens, but what does happen is is horrifying. It's more of a visual kind of movie, but that's also
Mm,
where I had one of the problems where I wasn't sure what exactly was happening. You said there was a rape, and I thought I don't know where exactly that took place because I was watching the movie and it just
mhm,
you you have to watch it multiple times in order to truly
mm.
understand the sequence of events that take place. I think at least for me.
Yeah, well, maybe it's better to just talk about scenes that we felt most strongly about rather than like what happened first this time, because there's not really much of a story. But I would say, um, like the very first scene, I thought, oh, she's just been raped. Or she's been, I didn't know who, but like I think the very first thing you see is like the camera between her legs, which is constant. Like I think half the runtime of this film is between this girl's legs, whether it's changing the paper to put in her underwear for her period, or any bleeding that she has or discharges or whatever, or a much later one shot take of, I think, the most disturbing scene, the abortion scene, um, or whatever it was. But so much of this movie is spent between this girl's legs, and it is extremely uncomfortable. But I thought it was like, you see her legs, and it's not really clear what she's doing. And then I think she's like playing with her underwear and like snapping it against her privates. And
Mhm.
there's like a birthmark on her leg. At, at, at that moment, I didn't realize it was a birthmark until later because it was still there later.
Mhm.
Um, but I thought it was blood. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh no, something horrible has happened. And then not only that, but she was like trying to suffocate herself, right? Or drowning out all sensory input, like can't see, hear, smell, taste. I guess she could feel. Uh, but then there was somebody just, you know, uh, knocking on the door, and she's not answering it. Um, so at that moment, I kind of thought, oh, that's what happened. And actually, most of the time, I thought that just happened. And I thought, wait. We didn't see anything, though. Maybe I'm just imagining it, which then made me feel worse as of myself
Mm.
as a person, like rejecting what I guess the film is. It doesn't directly say, but it seems pretty clear. I think some of the other clues are the uncle touches her a couple times. Um, like there's a moment when the aunt yells at her to go to bed, and the uncle makes a bed, and she says, "We can sleep here," and tries to like grab her, and she smacks him away, and she runs out. Uh, and then there's another time after the abortion where her uncle is the only one to come visit her. Um, I get no, her aunt was there earlier in the day. Sorry, but he's coming to visit her at that time, and he tries to like caress her, and she also smacks him away. And there's also a scene where she like punches her stomach, right? Like she's
Yeah.
trying to have a stillbirth. Um, so yeah, I know that was kind of jumping all throughout the movie. I
Yeah.
think for this movie, maybe it's best to just talk about the most affecting scenes because it's just her suffering in her village, right?
Yeah, it's a child suffering for 2 hours and then
Yeah.
it ends.
Yeah. It's pretty dark. So what were the things that I wrote 2 pages of everything that happened and my thoughts, but we can just talk about what what parts affected you the most or what you noticed or what was frustrating for you.
Yeah, the first scene, like I like that. It kind of sets the tone for the entire movie, and it's filled with like the main things there. So you
Mm,
have the knocking at the door. the banging at the door actually, and her
Yeah.
wrapping a
Yeah.
pillow around her head. I'm trying to figure out like if she was trying to kill herself or
Right.
if she was just trying to drown out the noise, and it seems like it was just drowning out the noise. So you have that, and then you see the her window with like these boards on it, and
Right.
you see this family living in abject poverty. Uh,
Yep.
so that was kind of jarring there. You see the bizarre camera filming angles that they use, focusing on her legs, not quite looking at her face, which makes sense. You don't see this character's face all that often.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that was like a point of view thing, like what she's seeing, right?
yeah.
Between her legs.
But also like by focusing on her legs, you're dehumanizing her. You're
Mm.
not viewing this child as a human being. You're focusing
Mm.
on things other than her, which is how she feels. She feels like thrown by the wayside. And
Hmm.
then yeah, her pulling at her underwear. uh uh I think it's just uncomfortable. She's using paper. I don't think she's actually using tampons. To be
Yeah. I
honest.
don't think they have the money for it or the
Yeah, so
resources.
she's living in discomfort, as well as fear and
Mm.
poverty, and it like like she also wraps like a what is it, a religious or a spiritual verse,
Sutra.
a sutra, yeah,
Yeah.
the blood sutra, the blood pool sutra, and puts that in her tampon, and it's just bizarre, and
Yeah.
focusing on her legs, and like that entire scene, the first scene is what sets the tone for the movie, and you'll see throughout the story.
Mm.
But more so than that, this child, like Yao Honggui, she never, or she almost never talks throughout the movie. She
Yeah.
groans, she like whines by pushing people away, but you almost never see her actually talk in this movie.
Yeah.
And yet you
Just a
still
little bit.
get the feeling that she's suffering so much internally.
You know, she's sort of voiceless, right? She feels like she has no power. She's trapped there, right? So she's stuck with family members who don't want her because her parents don't want her. Uh, so she's the whole time I was just like so depressed that this poor girl had no. I think Agio, the boy, like her friend on the motorcycle, I think he cared about her, but he's not really family, right? Like she's still 14. She needs like an adult, um, like parental figure that loves her and isn't just like taking care of her, or in the uncle's case, doing the worst thing he can do, um, uh, based on the clues at least. Um, I believe there's another clue that the uncle has done something horrible. Do you remember the part where she has to take grandma to take photos?
Yeah, kind of.
She like her uncle tells her to take grandma to the photo store, and then we see her in a cute red dress with her uncle standing next to him, um, getting photos taken by the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is literally the only time she's smiling in the entire movie. She looks genuinely happy.
Well, she smiles like two times. One when she's getting the photo taken, which, you're supposed to smile, and the photographer tells her she has to smile. So you
Yeah.
can tell it's not something she wants to do. And then the second time is when she's talking with the blind man and with
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
her other male friend, friend boy guy. Like he makes a couple jokes, and she actually smiles, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, she likes this boy. This is the one person who maybe brings some joy to her life.
That's right. Well, at the photo booth, like I guess maybe I read her face wrong. I thought she seemed actually happy. But she might have just, yeah, she was being told to smile. So I could have just foolishly misinterpreted that. It would make sense, I guess, that she wasn't actually happy, but it cuts away. Like you can, if I remember it, you can still hear the sound from that part, but it's just a memory, and it shows what she's actually doing. And she's just got the bleakest, darkest look on her face. And yeah, and I think it cuts back and then it cuts back away. And yeah, it shows that juxtaposition. Like this is just a memory. And I thought like, oh, that was the last time she was actually happy. Um, Before something happened with the uncle, which there were hints later that I already mentioned. Um, so yeah, that like yeah, the boy making the joke. It was a pretty cruel joke to the
Mhm.
blind man hanging his photo, his portrait upside down. But it was like nice to see her actually smile. I guess besides the memory that is sort of tainted. I guess the other thing that I did want to mention was like when she's with her grandma, and her grandma make forces her to read the Blood Sutra, which I wrote down. I like I watched the scene and then I like went back to write it down exactly,
Wow.
because I wanted to talk about it because it's the most like depressing thing to make your granddaughter read.
Well, it's the most depressing thing to make women read because essentially,
Yeah,
if I recall right, like it's like women are going to be forced to recall their menses, I think, in hell.
yeah, they're gonna drink their menses in hell.
Yeah, so like
Uh,
it's essentially saying that women because they are women are inferior in some way, and
yeah,
they're not going to
sinful.
get to enjoy the beauty of paradise like men are.
Yeah, a monk sees a hell made of a pool of blood 84,000 feet wide. Women in pain, suffering. Mokuren, underworld god. That's what my notes were. Here's what the sutra is. Women's blood spills onto the ground. Their blood-stained clothes are washed in the river and pollute the waters with their filth. Sutra, yeah. And then I guess I didn't write the whole thing. I just wrote part of it, but it was like, I was like incredibly disturbed to see her basically indoctrinating her granddaughter about this like belief about the immorality of women, um, because of all their bleeding, whether they're having child miscarrying or uh, going through their period or anything like that. It's like, oh my God, how do you even get through life? Like how, if you really believe that about yourself, like I don't know if I could handle that, uh, sort of being indoctrinated with that, or even like, I don't understand how you can exist if that's how you feel, or
It
if that's
shows
what you
how
believe.
the patriarchy
Mm,
reinforces it by having the older women tell the younger women that
mm.
you're unimportant and this is all you can possibly be in life.
That's a real kick in the kick in the. I don't know. I was going to say a bad word. It's a real kick in the between the legs after everything else. Um, I really liked the scene where her friend, who calls her Guai Guai, Bayu, I think is her friend's name, the artist. I thought it was really nice that she wanted to like draw her, and that like um, she needed the rock. They were trading the eggs to get some stones, right? And money, and she used it as a seal for her art. And Honggui wanted to or Honggui wanted to keep it as a memento. I thought that was really sweet. And then it was like a nice profile shot of her, and one of the few times you actually hear her talking in the whole movie
Hmm.
is with just her friend, uh, and with Agio a little bit. Another one of those scenes is when she's hitting herself. That's when I noticed that the birthmark on her leg was not just blood. Um, yeah, she's just in her underwear. punching herself as hard as she can. Um,
I
and then
actually
there's
have
a
an interesting point to make here.
mm,
So at one point, there are a bunch of women talking while playing mahjong,
yeah,
and they talk about someone having a lot of miscarriages, uh,
yeah.
and or like abortions, and I don't know who they're specifically referring to in that moment.
They said someone under 16, and it had to be Honggui, maybe, but it could have been one of their other daughters or nieces, maybe.
Yeah, and so I wasn't quite sure who they were referring to, and I was like, did this happen over and over for this child? Um, but
Yeah.
but my point here is they keep talking about that, how it's known, and they don't do anything about it. And then
Mm,
there's also talk of having only like one child and wanting it to be a boy. And I think
yeah,
that it's sort of commenting on the one child policy, which at this point was
definitely.
slowly making its way to an end. Um, it was
Yeah.
it was unfortunately
And,
still in effect for a little bit. But then also, when you pair that with the fact that Honggui is living with her aunt and uncle, and
mm,
like she can't seem to contact her mom and dad. They seem to have
yeah.
sent her away, which I think suggests again the one child policy. Um, so like
Yeah, it could be. I didn't think about that. I mean, I did hear the one child policy thing. There's definitely a critique of that. I know that I think they left for the city because they were looking for better jobs. I remember the aunt was talking about like they wanted to borrow some more money from her for something they wanted to do. Uh, I guess it would make sense. Like maybe they wanted to start anew and have another child, possibly because the aunt could not have a child, and that's why she wanted Hongwei to keep the child, so that they could raise it. Which was it when I got to that point is when I started messaging you. These effing people. I
yeah,
was
yeah.
so angry. I just like, how do I punch people that are in a movie right now? I was really mad about that. Um, I think there's another, yeah, there's definitely a lot of commentary on the one child policy and this sort of like resignation to this is what life is and we're not going to do anything about it and we're just going to while away the hours in this like hopeless little village.
Hmm.
Um, I believe there's a scene that I also felt was very weird. Agio is with some man in a hotel who's changing his shoes and takes a shower, and the guy is telling Agio that um, he can come to work in a factory, which I guess shows like leave this place, come to the city to work in a factory, more modernization, right? But I thought maybe why is he in a hotel room with him? Is this another like dark moment of taking advantage of a young person? I'm not sure,
I
but
thought maybe that was his father or something.
yeah, it could be. But why would they be in a hotel?
Mm. It's interesting because like if you take all of that, the abortion, it's like every part of the process encourages
Mm,
like not having women child or like not having daughters. And when you have a daughter, you like they get pushed to the side.
mm,
Like I think Huangi Ji is encouraged to have a boy, even though she's a child, because you know having a daughter will just like make this cycle go on and on and on.
mm,
And then yeah, uh like any daughters that you do have are again are pushed aside or just like sent off to some god knows where, and they end up having these situations where no one's really looking after them, no one's checking to see their mental state, because
hmm
Huang Ji is very much not okay. It's not even like a subtle like Like she's suffering inside. She's suffering externally. Anyone can see this. Nobody
Mm.
fucking cares about this child.
No, no one cares at all about Huang Ji is the director, but I guess it's autobiographical, so there's some level of personal experience there. It's yeah, Yao Hong Gui. No one except Ajio seems to care about her at all. She is completely alone, which is why she's silent, right? Totally voiceless. Um, there's another part about her being pregnant that like was a 1-2 punch with the aunt trying to like adopt the child, which is that they were taught like the aunt and the uncle were talking to each other and they couldn't even look each other in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were not looking at each other in the eye at all that entire scene. And they start talking about like she needs to keep it. But also before they say that, before the aunt says that, she also says that it's Ajo's child, but doesn't actually seem convinced that it is, especially with the way the uncle like is talking. uh it seems like she, I don't know if she found out or already knew and is just like keeping hush hush. I think she knew uh what he did, um if I read it correctly, I guess, based on the clues. I think she knew what the uncle did to their niece and is just, trying to push off the blame, anything for this new child that they want to have that she can't have herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was like viscerally so angry at the world and just felt like there is so much suffering in this world. I was, uh,
It's infuriating, and like
yeah.
like there, no one's stopping it because it's the rural countryside of
Mm,
China, and it like it's there's no like stopgaps in place to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen.
yeah.
Um, and again, because no one's looking at Honggui, like they're looking
Mm,
through this child, or if you're using the camera angle, they're like looking at her legs, or they're looking to the side of her. There, no one's actually
yeah.
seeing this child.
Sexualizing her in some way.
Yeah, and
Um,
I especially thought that scene that you just described was a little harrowing because a little bit like after that we see the glucose water, which I wasn't quite sure what that was for. Um,
Yeah, I didn't know either because I thought they wanted her to keep the child, but then I thought maybe the glucose water is to like have a uh like a um like a medicine to make the baby die. I forget the word for that right now. I'm sure you can think of it. Um
Abortion.
Not, oh yeah, not like yeah, an abortive medicine.
Yeah.
I think
But
there's
it gives
another.
it gives credit to your idea that the father must, or like the father must be the uncle, because
Mm.
if he so badly doesn't want his crimes to be known that he's willing to have the baby aborted.
Yeah, yeah. He convinced the aunt, I guess, who was desperate to have the child. Maybe that's when she accepted it. If she didn't know, that's when she knew. Um, but I think she did know, and she was being stubborn. And then, yeah, with that scene with the glucose water, came to terms with it. Like, okay, this needs to happen instead. Because she was like in the room and couldn't even look at after that. Couldn't even look at Honggui. Uh, and then I guess there's just like when she miscarries and has also deeply uncomfortable. I thought that was a really great scene because I really liked the like sort of like she's suffering and she's moaning and she's falling off her bed, right? Passing the a piece of the baby or a piece of her uterus or something, um, which was pretty horrifying. You just hear it, but then the sound design kind of changes when it shows like the fun that people are having outside by basically by watching the fireworks. Not for her. Um, and it was like, I can't be any more depressed right now. Stop doing this to me. But I thought that was a really affecting
Yeah.
scene.
And we're talking around what's coming next. And
Yeah.
like this I think from this point on it broke me. This is what made me just hate the movie. Like the 2 hours of suffering, and it's just like the
Mm,
climax is the most horrifying, like agonizing moment, and like to be in Huangui's shoes, which I could never possibly be as a man,
yeah.
like that, it's like it's so depressing. And describe what happens, Lucas.
It is a 4 minute, I don't know, 10-second uh, part of the film, one solid cut.
You
Uh,
counted it.
something
I
like
can't
that.
believe it. I just sat there in just despair, and you counted the seconds.
I didn't really count the seconds. I think it's about 10. It was a little past 4 minutes. I saw the minute mark. Anyway, it's a 4 minute plus scene of her abortion to get the rest of the baby out, I guess. And it's from her point of view. So it's between her legs as she's moaning and crying and suffering because of what has been done to her. And it is so, there's not any words for it. It's just so bleak and hard to watch and harrowing. Like, this was truly the climax of it was building up to this, right? With all those shots between her legs. Like, this was genuinely the worst thing I've ever, like, the worst feeling I've ever had watching cinema. I felt so disgusted and angry, and like, I genuinely wanted to hurt people. No one that made the movie, they did a great job, I think, but just there, like, there was so much suffering in the world, and someone needs to pay. Uh, I was I was also pretty broken, but I think I was broken in the sense that, oh, I like this movie, but it hurts. And you were just like, I hate that I had to see that.
Yeah, it was agonizing for me.
Mm,
Like just to watch this like child, 14, 15, 16 years old, like
14.
have to undergo this process. Like
Mm,
no teenager should ever have to experience this. And Honggui is dealing with this. This is something that she'll have to carry for the rest of her godforsaken life. And then on top of that, you hear the fireworks going on outside, which you've noted. But like I heard them especially at this point, and it's just like these fucking people are celebrating while a child is suffering. And like they don't know that
yeah.
she's suffering, of course, but like it just
Like,
goes to show this entire everyone around her was so busy focusing on their own garbage
mm,
and ignoring this child's suffering that they can continue to celebrate while this horrific event is going on.
yeah, it really does feel like, I mean, they don't know, uh, like you said, but it's like, how can life go on? How can you do that? How can you celebrate? Don't you know what's. It's very, yeah, it's so hard and painful to watch. And then there's a few short scenes after this. The aunt is in the hospital with Honggui, and she's asking the doctor to keep it secret because she's still in school. It's
Right.
like, just literally get out of this girl's life. I hate you. And I hate your husband even more. But yeah, the doctor reassures her that this is part of, doctor patient confidentiality. And then the uncle shows up a little bit later. Like I said before, she whacks him away and
Mm-hmm.
he just like leaves. And then I think, see her running on a street,
Wait,
and we
wait,
see,
wait. There's one other thing.
oh, I missed something.
The uncle is sort of messing with her room.
Mm.
I don't know
Yeah,
what's
he's
going on there.
that's right after. There's a someone running on a street and he's watching. And then that scene cuts. I don't know what that was about. I guess he was watching Honggui after the hospital. I'm not sure. And then he's cleaning up the room and rearranging stuff.
I don't know.
To
What is he trying to cover up his crimes? Is he?
I don't know. I didn't know what that was about. I feel dumb for not understanding. Like, is he getting rid of her? Are like they not gonna keep her around anymore? That was my thought, but I don't think that's what it was.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly clear.
Yeah,
Again,
that
that
was
happens a lot throughout the movie where you need to watch it with a friend, a Lucas, or you need to like rewatch it multiple times. And even then,
yeah.
I'm not sure like what exactly is the intended meaning there.
Yeah, I felt like I understood most of the movie except that last little bit. Like I didn't understand what was going on. Why was he doing that? But then there's I don't know if it's the uncle, I think it is, or maybe it's there was a scene with a grandma talking to an old guy. I don't remember if that's at the end of the movie or in the middle.
Yeah, well, they're just sitting there, and then they trade, or they give the old man
Eggs.
eggs, and they're sitting
Yeah.
next to pictures and whatnot.
Yeah. That was a strange little scene. I guess she moved on with her life.
Hmm.
I really liked the scene where the chicken had its neck slit to bleed on the sutra, and then you see the wings of the chicken sort of flapping. I wrote a little note that it's like, yeah, the chicken is cut to bleed on the sutra, and it flaps helplessly to death. And I just thought, like, that's Honggui right
Hmm.
there.
And
Like,
the interesting thing about the eggs in the movie is that, like, women also have eggs inside of them. They
mm,
don't lay eggs or anything like that, but the use of the eggs here definitely seems to evoke women and
yeah, that's right.
femininity.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then Honggui is taking, again, we see her legs. She's taking a bath and she checks between her legs and she sees some blood and then it ends.
Yeah.
And it,
Was
and the,
she kind of smiled? Like I thought maybe, oh, she's menstruating again after this horrific
yeah,
event, and maybe there's some hope there, but it also felt like she's huddled in the bathroom on her knees, or like on her, no, like kind of like folded in on herself, and
yeah,
it doesn't seem that positive.
yeah. I, and it was even worse because I don't know if you didn't stop the movie right away and you like listened to the end credits, it just continues to have like you only see the credits coming up, you don't see her, but she's still taking a bath during that time, and it's just like a really really great sound design choice in that moment. Instead of having music play, like that would have ruined the vibe. So that was a really smart choice. It just made it feel even even darker when the
I didn't
scream
notice
is.
that. That's a good point. I had to stop the movie specifically so I could yell at you.
Sure. Well, I would say there's a few things that we didn't really talk about, like when Ajo gets yelled at for uh, losing something, and he loses 500 kwai, 500 RMB, Chinese money, for something, and he only gets 1,000. If he took it, we're not entirely sure. He like leaves, and there's another part where she's at school, like the only time we see her at school, where she's like, I don't know how she did it. I guess the paper from her underwear slipped down her pants, and when she was like, I don't remember if she was taking a drink or washing her hands, but from a drinking from a water fountain, but it came down to her shoes and she was like trying to step over it to hide it. And then all the other kids called her gross, even though they were like running around on the playground. Um, but again, just more like humiliation for the
Yeah.
youth, especially for her. I thought I loved, I mean, I did not really like being between her legs, but I thought it was a very effective shot. especially for the climax, even though it was disturbing. So I liked the way it was shot, and I loved the way that shadows were used, which was basically constantly on Honggui and her surroundings.
Well,
Um,
I know like Scorsese wasn't the first to do this, but I was recently watching a video on YouTube with Scorsese, and
mm,
he was talking about like a bunch of his movies, and he's talked about Taxi Driver and how like in one scene like the camera cuts away from Travis as he's talking on the phone. And like he was talking about how like
mm,
that it's meant to make you uncomfortable because you're not supposed to hear it, but you're hearing it, but you're not seeing it. And so
yeah,
like that's what I feel like a lot of this movie is. Like we're not supposed to see it, and we're like there she's also Huang Ji is using this to get in our or to get into the mindset of Honggui, and to also
yeah,
get us to see how society sees Huang Ji. So the use of
yeah.
camera work and cinematography in this movie is just absolutely amazing, I think.
Yeah, I did read that this was actually set in her hometown, which like one thing that I think is really amazing about the movie is like I guess because of those camera shots between her legs and some of the other stuff, like this has such a personal feel to it. Like this feels so personal and lived through, and like literally only a woman who has gone through this kind of thing could possibly make this film and make it this visceral, to like make people like you and me who have wildly different life experiences feel uh, something like the same discomfort. Obviously, the actual sort of reality of this would be far worse to suffer through, but in that sense,
Well,
that's why I really liked it, because it like I felt it so much.
Well, like, yeah, I totally understand what you just said there. And when I think about this movie, like I feel appalled because again, the child is suffering. But
Mm,
when I examine that feeling even further, it's kind of what you said there. Like, I have to ask myself, do I not like this because it's so heavily focused on menstruating, and we as a
mm,
society just don't talk about that. Like,
right,
you don't see that really mentioned in movies or TV shows.
right.
Um, or if you do, it's kind of mentioned as a joke, and we also don't really talk about familial rape and whatnot, which
Right.
implied is what happens here, and they don't really talk about it in this movie, but they do kind of. There's a by not talking about it, there's a commentary on
Mm,
on that and how it's
right.
sort of normalized. So like. I don't like this movie, but I think I don't like it because of how well it's done. And so I
Sure.
recognize that it's probably like a perfect well made, very good movie, but the things in it I probably won't ever want to watch again because it's so filled with so much
Sure.
suffering and despair.
I don't think I will ever watch the movie again. I loved it, and I can't handle it. I don't want to see the abortion scene again, even though I thought it was brilliant. Um, yeah. Well, I guess I. Speaking of, my notebook has Tomie, Junji Ito book, who is
Ooh.
another girl, sort of demon girl, who is hypersexualized by people around her, and that causes all kinds of problems. Just not really important, but relates in some respect to our movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, Tomie is pretty good, if you ever get around to it.
Oh, I
Um,
will. I love Junji Ito.
yeah, he's great. Anyway, I guess my only question that I have left, or thought that I have, is like, did you in any way relate to like the feeling of not from Huang Ji, but I more so the adults, like when they're playing mahjong, like the feeling of kind of quiet despair of like I'm whiling away my life. I have nothing to look forward to in this small town, and there's nothing here for me, but I can't go. and I'm just going to waste time, drink, play games. Nothing's important.
That's a very good point, Lucas. No, I don't relate to it because I think we both grew up in rural Iowa.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say I related to it. I don't relate now.
yeah. Well, like I grew up we both did, but like I left Iowa
Mhm.
like in my early 20s. So
Mm,
like and I was also in college from like 18 until like
right,
21. So like I don't really relate to it because I got out of Iowa um while while I could. But I did see growing up a lot of people who related to or who seemed like these women, these
mm,
mahjong players. They were at bars and hanging out at
right.
cafe, and they like I'm pretty sure they seem like they're whiling away their time until they die, and also ignoring the suffering of the people around them.
Mm,
So like
yeah.
I couldn't relate, but I definitely saw it and was like, oh yeah, this is very familiar. I know these people.
Yeah, I guess I should say that. I mean, like when I was young, I always thought like I need to get out of rural Iowa. So in that sense, but I was, still quite young, not middle-aged, getting closer to the end of my life, whiling away life and uncaring about what's going on around me. But I also did see lots of people like that. So in that sense, yeah, I can relate by recognizing people that I in my hometown. Uh, but I also did have that feeling. But I was young, so it's a little different. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts? Any other things you want to bring up or say, or should
No,
we wrap up?
I think we covered everything, but again, Yao Honggui, great little actress. I don't think she's been in anything else. It seems like
Mm,
Huangi Ji uses her in other movies. Um,
sure,
so I do want to see maybe more, but also I hope she's not suffering in those movies. Like give her like
please,
a fun little romantic comedy to play around with.
please let this poor actress have a good time.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, really decent acting, and like everyone in this movie does good acting, but
yeah,
especially Yao. I was amazed.
yeah. I thought she played it perfectly. And I think the uncle and aunt were also perfect in their roles. Like they were just disgusting enough to me to hate them forever. And it's kind of like how people hated Joffrey from Game
Mhm.
of Thrones, and they hated Jack Gleason. I hate them. Not really, but they were very good in the movie. Um, and so was uh, uh, um, Yao Honggui. I guess that just leaves time for you to announce what our next movie for December will be.
Well, I before that, I just want to say I recommend this movie, I guess, because like although
Maybe.
it wasn't 100% for me, it's probably for some other people out there. I just want to urge, like as we've been saying, trigger warning, of course, for rape and also deeply traumatic child suffering that might awaken memories from certain people. So just have that knowledge out there. And then
Yeah.
yeah, we are going to talk about a movie in December. I was thinking about another movie led by a female director, but I was also thinking about a movie about Africa because we haven't really focused on movies
Mm,
from Africa. And
true.
for an interesting reason, there aren't a lot of movies because they're like they're not widely publicized and made available because, of course,
Right.
Hollywood has so often forgotten about Africa, or they've filmed in Africa,
Mm.
but they've made it primarily about white people. Um,
Yeah.
so
Blood
there,
Diamonds.
unfortunately, the movie that I'm gonna pick is actually an Italian African movie, but it's about a historic event in North Africa, and two, it's also about colonialism, which is
Oh.
significant at this point in time, given everything that's going on with Palestine, Gaza, and
Mm.
the IDF's rampant mass murder, genocide, and colonialism, which is what France was doing in the 1950s and 60s to their colonies, who they were constantly fighting and trying to get get them to submit when they were rebelling.
Mm.
And so the movie that I picked is The Battle of Algiers, which
Oh, I've been wanting to watch that.
yeah, it was made in the 1960s. I had to sit in on a French history class for work, and they mentioned this movie specifically. And I just encountered it again when I was looking for movies about Africa. And so it's very well regarded, and I think it should be very interesting insight into colonialism and whatnot. Although my one qualm is that it is made by Italians. So, again, we haven't really talked
Mm.
about Italian, especially classic Italian spaghetti sort of style filmmaking there. So that'll be interesting to check out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I will follow suit for my next pick because I know a really great African director. So we can try to follow through with this dream of yours to get an African directed African movie.
All right.
But I'm looking forward to the Battle of Algiers. I've heard it's amazing.
Perfect. Okay. And I don't know where you can find it, but I will message you and let you know when I do find it. Because this one was particularly hard to find because you can't find it on Amazon. The only place, as you said, was the Criterion Collection, which is
Sure.
just fascinating that like such a great movie would be hidden behind like such a big like paywall and whatnot. But
Mm.
so yeah, that was Egg and Stone. Our movie for next month, and we definitely recommend this. So if you want to talk more about movies and whatnot, comment below. Let's hear your thoughts on this if you've seen it already. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this movie or this director or even this actress if they don't already know. She is wonderful. And also join the Discord. There's a link to it in the description. Lucas posts there from time to time. And until then, also make sure you go check out Lucas's channel on Strike the Sun MD. I'll put a link to it in the description. And
we're talking Batman next, or Mother 3.
Yeah,
whichever one I finish first.
Yeah. And then until then, we wish you the best of luck in your weird and rural Chinese travels if you go there. Farewell.
Farewell.